Nice to
Hello.
meet you. First off, congratulations on such an amazing role. That is so cool. I know we don't have that much time, but I really want to focus on the obviously the Comanche side of things and the indigenous people. Kind of my first question is going into this role, what was going through your mind knowing that it was going to have such a huge representation for indigenous people?
Mm. It was a lot of excitement and also a lot of pressure because I knew that whether or not I was involved, this movie was going to exist. So then once I knew that, I was the one who was fortunate enough to be able to do this, I think the focus became a lot of like wanting to do a good job at like making a cool movie, but also wanting to be, I guess, like worthy of this position of like getting to be in the spot to like represent indigenous people and indigenous women and like kind of do that in the film and hopefully give native people something that we could all be proud of.
And when you were doing the role, were there any challenges, learning the Comanche language? And I know it's super action packed. Is that, were there challenges when it came to that as well?
Yeah, both. Like it felt really exciting to be able to show up to work every day and get to learn about like Comanche culture because like that's something that obviously in my real life I care about learning about my own culture and other whoever is around me, like my friends and stuff like that and or just anywhere I go. So to be able to show up at work and that was my job was like that felt really amazing. And then definitely like the physical stuff also was its own like element of this movie, whether that was like the mud pit or like the river or the big fights or like there was just it was like that part was just endless. So like knowing that, but even that stuff, I was like, man, like my ancestors were like tough. So it was just like I would complain and then I'd be like, I don't want to be a wimp.
With that being said, working to learn the culture, did you work with any Comanche tribal members during the production?
Yeah, so Jane Myers, our producer, is an enrolled Comanche member, and she was around every single day, like from prep to every day of shooting. And then, since we've been in post, stuff like that, she's always around. And so she was really like our biggest Comanche resource. And then on top of that, like since then, we dubbed the entire movie in Comanche, like every single actor did their own dubbing. So like learning the Comanche language and we had multiple Comanche language speakers so who were like working on the translation and were in every single session making sure that people were getting their pronunciation right and the cadence and the grammar and stuff like that. So um for me getting to learn about the language that way because the language is where all the history is and where everything lives and stuff like that, so getting to learn about that and just Comanche culture in general was like so cool.
I know that they came here to Lawton to kind of do a premiere. Were you a part of that? Did you come down here?
I did. That was a funny experience for me because that was only the second time I had seen the movie. And we all went because obviously, like, what's most important to me is that Indian country and specifically Comanche people like the movie or feel like, there's something that they can be proud of or enjoy or get behind because, that's who it's about. Like, that's who it's for, obviously. So we thought that having that would be a good idea. So we took it to Lawton and then on the drive over, Dan and Jane were like, we think we shouldn't tell them that you're going to be there so that in the Q&A afterwards they can feel free to speak. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And then Dan was like, but just so you know, they might say horrible things about you. Okay, bye. And I was like, wait a minute, what? And I got scared. He didn't say it like that, but for drama he did. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't think about that. So then I spent the whole movie, I was like sitting in like the back of the theater, like at the top, and I was just like watching everybody like watch the movie. And I was like looking at the screen and like looking at people on the screen and like looking. I like literally spent the whole time just like forward in my chair. But then at the same time, I was like, hey, this is a pretty cool movie. Like I was watching it from like somebody else's perspective, and I was like, I like this movie. And then, everybody had really positive things to say, and it made me really emotional and proud.
And going into that, Comanche is one of those that are sadly starting to be a dying language. And without our language, because I am Comanche, so without our language, we are no longer a person.
Mhm.
And so, what are your feelings on this movie being dubbed in Comanche and having that option for all ages to watch the movie that way?
I honestly, it is historic that this is being done because it's the first time a film is ever releasing in a native language, like on upon release. Like, Star Wars and Finding Nemo got dubbed in Navajo like far after the release. So this is the first time that this is happening. And, hearing stuff like that, it's there's definitely like a duality of emotions because when you think about that and like dying languages and stuff like that makes me really obviously sad because I feel the same way, about any culture. I feel that way about like my culture. I'm Lakota, Nakota, and Dakota. So like growing up in my house, like my dad knows way more Lakota than I do, but just because like he grew up on his res and I didn't. Like I grew up in New Mexico and there's not a lot of Lakota people there. So like to be able to do this, I think means so much because the preservation of language, like you're saying, is the preservation of culture. Like it's the preservation of people. Like going all the way back, like we've always been oral storytellers. Like this is our medium, like filmmaking, storytelling, entertainment, like this belongs to us. So like having just that, I think is something that like to be so proud of, not just for like us who made the movie, but like for Native people as a whole, and especially Comanche people.
I agree 100%. We have a couple more minutes, but what the last thing I wanted to ask you is there anything specific that you love to learn about Comanche culture that kind of coincides with your culture?
Mm, you know, it's cool because obviously, like, you guys are Southern Plains and I'm Northern Plains. And so, like, getting to Jane Myers is actually like, she also lives in New Mexico. So, like, I've known her and her daughters for a while, but like, getting to really invest the time to figure out like what's similar and what's not is so cool. Like, literally, like, not my boyfriend lives in Canada, he's Cree, and like, we found a porcupine on the side of the road and we picked it up. And then I was like, man, my dad was out of the country. So I was like, who do I know that like knows how to clean a porcupine? And I was like, oh, Jane. And I called Jane and I was like, how do I clean these porcupine quills? And like, she knew. And then later somebody was like, why did you call your producer about a porcupine? And I was like, you wouldn't understand. But like, just having like that environment inside of a like workspace for a movie, you're like, wow, that's so meaningful. So just to know, like, even the when I was in the dubbing, um the word for like a people in Lakota is oyate, and I forget yours, but it's like very similar. And it was something like oyat or something like that, and I was talking about it and it was like looking at all the, and like the Cree word for hello is tante, and then you guys also have danse as a word in your language, it means something else. So like even just within language, like looking at that and seeing how like all the different like plains tribes can overlap a little bit in their language shows like, that throughout history, obviously, like we're all unique in our own, but also we've interacted with each other and overlapped like so many times throughout history, and that we're all just obviously like related and connected, and that like wherever you go, like I had Jane where I was like, oh man, like there's another Native woman here, even if it was only one that I knew was gonna be there. Obviously, like then there were more Native people on the crew and stuff, but like that's just always like there's a comfort in that you can't describe, and knowing that that exists is like it's just like amazing.
That was a great answer. Thank you so much. Well, we have to wrap up, but thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.